On November 17, 2023 year, at 5 hours and 14 minutes in the morning, a 7-year-old girl named Lisa called the emergency number 112. In a trembling voice, she reported that a stranger had entered her house. The operator asked Lisa to hide and wait for the police to arrive. The first patrol arrived at the scene 8 minutes later. In a 3-story villa in the elite village of Sosnovyy Bor, the lifeless bodies of a man and a woman with numerous stab and cut wounds were found. 34-year-old Anna Sokolova was lying in the master bedroom on the 2nd floor. 38-year-old Sergei Sokolov was found in the corridor next to the stairs. 11-month-old Kirill Sokolov was in his crib. The only survivor was 7-year-old Lisa Sokolova. She was found in the corner of the living room, wrapped in a blanket. Upon examination, medical workers found no injuries. During the interrogation, she said that she woke up from the noise, saw a man in a mask and hid. The tragedy at the Sokolov family home shocked even experienced police officers. No one guessed that the investigation team was looking for a non-existent criminal, and that the culprit was right in front of them all this time. The Sokolov family moved to Sosnovyy Bor in the 2016 year. We were all envious of them, because Sergei was a financial director in a large bank, with an annual income of more than 15 million rubles, says Irina Kravtsova, who lives in the next house. Lisa Sokolova studied in the 2nd grade of a prestigious gymnasium. Teachers noted her outstanding abilities in mathematics and music. At the age of 6, she spoke fluent English and was preparing for international Olympiads. She had the highest grades in the class. We predicted a bright future for her, says the director of the gymnasium Svetlana Morozova. If someone had told me that she was capable of such a thing, I would never have believed it. The first alarming signs appeared in December of 2022 year, after the birth of Kirill. It was then that strange things began to happen in the Sokolov house. In January 2023 year, the baby was hospitalized with symptoms similar to poisoning. Doctors could not determine the exact cause, but found an open window in the child's room. In March, the nanny found traces of injections on the boy's body. The examination showed that these were punctures from a sewing needle. 65-year-old Maria Petrova worked as a nanny in the Sokolov family for 2 years. She sounded the alarm first. I noticed the way the girl was looking at her brother. I won't forget that look for the rest of my life. A complete lack of emotion, as if she was looking not at a person, but at an object. I tried to talk to Lisa, but she wouldn't listen to me. In April 2023 year, Maria was hospitalized with severe poisoning. Toxicological examination revealed traces of rat poison in her blood. After discharge, the woman refused to return to the Sokolov house and resigned. I was sure Lisa did it, but who would have believed that a 7-year-old child could do such a thing? Over the next 6 months, several nannies were replaced in the Sokolov house. None of them have worked there for more than a month. The latter quit a week before the tragedy because of the gloomy atmosphere and the strange behavior of the girl. Neighbors began to notice changes in the family. Anna looked exhausted and often cried. Sergei began to linger at work. Loud quarrels were increasingly heard in the house. I once saw Anna run out of the house in the middle of the night in her nightgown. She shouted into the phone that she couldn't take it anymore, that something terrible was happening in the house, recalls Kravtsova's neighbor. The day before the tragedy, Lisa's teacher called her parents to school. Drawings of knives and bloody figures were found in her notebook. The school psychologist recommended contacting a specialist, but it was already too late. On the 17th of November, 2023 year, at 2:40 minutes of the night, the Sokolov couple returned from a charity event. The maid left the house at 22 hours and 15 minutes after putting the children to bed. According to the CCTV footage, no one entered or left the house before the police arrived. Based on the materials of the investigation, the events of the night of November 17, 2023 year, were reconstructed step by step. Anna and Sergei Sokolov returned home from a charity event of the Children of the Future Foundation at 2:34 in the morning. Surveillance cameras recorded how at 2 hours and 52 minutes they went up to the bedroom. At this time, the children were already asleep. At 3 hours and 13 minutes, the camera in the hallway shows Lisa leaving her room and heading to the kitchen. She spends 7 minutes there before returning to the bedroom with something in her hand. Experts later determined that it was a kitchen knife with a blade 15 centimeters long. At 3:34 minutes, the camera on the stairs captures Lisa climbing to the 3rd floor, where Kirill's nursery is located. There was no camera in the room itself, so the investigators had to rely on circumstantial evidence and the results of a forensic medical examination. Kirill Sokolov was found in his crib with numerous stab and cut wounds in the neck and chest. Experts counted a total of 8 stab wounds. According to the pathologist's report, death occurred around 4 o'clock exactly in the morning from blood loss. At 4 hours and 53 minutes, the camera again recorded Lisa coming down the stairs. This time, there are dark spots on her nightgown. Forensics confirmed that it was the baby's blood. The subsequent events took place in the parents' bedroom on the 2nd floor. Judging by the location of the bodies and the nature of the wounds, the next victim was Anna Sokolova. She received 12 stab wounds, mainly in the neck and upper body. Defensive wounds were found on her hands, indicating that the woman was trying to defend herself. Anna most likely woke up during the attack, according to the conclusion of the forensic medical expert. The nature of the wounds indicates that the first blows were inflicted when she was lying on her back, and then tried to sit up and fight back the attacker. The investigation found fragments of Lisa's skin and threads from her nightgown under Anna's nails. This indicates a brief struggle between mother and daughter. Anna's screams probably woke Sergei up. Judging by the footprints on the carpet and bloodstains on the wall, the man jumped out of bed and rushed to the bedroom door. He was stabbed in the back and received additional blows when he fell in the corridor. In total, 17 wounds were found on Sergei's body. Death occurred as a result of a blow that damaged the carotid artery in the neck. After the incident, Lisa returned to the kitchen. Here she carefully washed the knife, then changed her clothes and hid her nightgown in a trash can in the garage. Forensics found this key piece of evidence there. At 4:42 in the morning, the cameras recorded Lisa returning to her room. She stayed there until 5:14 in the morning, before calling the emergency service. When I entered the house, I saw the girl in the living room, recalls Alexei Karpov, the first investigator who arrived at the scene. She sat motionless, wrapped in a blanket. The first thing that alerted me was the lack of tears. In such situations, children are usually hysterical. During the interrogation, Lisa said that she woke up from the noise, saw a large man in black clothes and a mask, and then hid in a closet. She claimed that she did not see what happened to her parents and brother. Her story was too consistent for a child in a state of shock. She repeated it word for word, as if she had memorized it by heart. This is especially uncharacteristic for child witnesses. Initially, the police were still looking for an unknown criminal. Criminologists carefully examined all the windows and doors of the house for signs of forced entry. CCTV footage was studied not only in the house, but also around the perimeter of the site. No evidence of an intruder was found. The turning point in the investigation came 3 days after the incident. Forensics found microscopic traces of the blood of all 3 victims on a carefully washed and returned to the drawer kitchen knife. Lisa's fingerprints were found on the handle of the knife. The former nanny Maria Petrova, having learned about the tragedy, immediately contacted the police. I immediately told them to check the girl. She's capable of that. Psychologist Elena Volkova, who worked with Lisa at school, gave investigators Lisa's notebook with drawings of scenes of violence and blood. In recent months, her drawings have become increasingly disturbing. Most often, they depicted a baby surrounded by red lines resembling blood. On the 6th of December, 2023 year, after 2 weeks of investigation, the investigators came to the conclusion that Lisa Sokolova had committed the crime. Given her age, we diagnosed criminal liability. The girl has a complete lack of empathy. She does not repent of her actions. At the same time, her intelligence is significantly above average, which allowed her to hide her true state for a long time. During the therapy sessions, Lisa finally told about the motives of her action. According to her, she had been planning her actions since the birth of her brother. They loved him more. I wanted them to disappear. This phrase is recorded in the protocol of the session of January 15, 2024 year. After Lisa was placed in a specialized medical facility, investigators continued to study her family history. Investigators found that behind the apparent well-being, there were serious problems that no one noticed. An analysis of Anna Sokolova's personal correspondence showed that she noticed disturbing changes in her daughter's behavior. A year before the tragedy, in the messages of her friend Marina Klimova, she wrote, "Sometimes I'm afraid of my own child. I know it's not normal. But when she looks at me, it seems to me that she has an emptiness inside." According to colleagues, Sergei Sokolov has become withdrawn and irritable in recent months. He refused corporate events and often took work home. According to his assistant Igor Pavlov, Sergei once admitted that something strange was happening in the house, but refused to specify what exactly. A study of Lisa's school records revealed several previously undisclosed incidents. In September 2022 year, the teacher found a dead bird wrapped in a paper napkin in Lisa's desk. In October, 2 classmates complained that Lisa threatened them with scissors. In December, a school nurse recorded cases when Lisa hit another student's head on the edge of the table. But the victim's parents did not file a complaint. After these incidents, Lisa's parents took her out of school for 2 weeks. Sergei explained to the management that they were consulting with a private psychologist. There were no documents on consultations in the case. After the birth of Kirill, the situation deteriorated sharply. The baby's medical record recorded 6 emergency department visits in the first 6 months of his life. Doctors diagnosed bruises, cuts, and burns of the first degree. Parents attributed the injuries to domestic accidents. In February 2023 year, the pediatrician sent a request to the guardianship authorities to check the condition of the child, but the investigation did not reveal any violations. Recordings from home surveillance cameras, recovered by technical experts, contained dozens of episodes when Lisa hurt her brother when her parents were not watching. She pricked him with needles, covered his face with a pillow, and added unknown substances to baby food. In Anna's personal diary, found in the bedroom safe, there were records of her growing suspicions. Today, I found Lisa standing with scissors over Kiryusha's crib. She said she wanted to cut off a lock of his hair as a keepsake. I don't believe her. God, am I going crazy? She's my baby. Sergei says I need to rest. The last entry in the diary is dated November 15, 2 days before the incident. I found her collection in a shoe box under the bed. There were strands of Kiryusha's hair, his nipple stained with something red, a dried mouse, and threads tied in knots like fingers. I showed Sergei. He finally understood. We decided to take Lisa to a specialist on Monday. I hope it's not too late. The identity of the young acquaintance of Shanov was quickly established. Karina Kulik. She lived with her mother and attended school in the Ufa area. She was expelled for absenteeism. She tried to continue her education in 2 more educational institutions, but she never found a common language with the teaching staff. It is noteworthy that until recently Karina was considered one of the best students. What turned an exemplary student into a truant who was not accepted into prestigious schools? Her mother attributed this to a serious illness, because of which her daughter had to take care of her. Exactly what kind of illness it was, and why the woman allowed her daughter to neglect her studies, remained a mystery. When investigators began to be interested in Karina, her mother had already recovered. But the woman was still more interested in her own life than in her daughter's affairs. She was actively looking for a life partner and had little interest in education. The woman was looking for a potential husband via the internet. Probably, Karina decided to follow her example. Relations with Emil developed slowly. They corresponded for several weeks. Finally, we met. For some reason, this meeting convinced the man that this is the young lady, the one. A fragile, attractive, inexperienced, tender bud that will bloom fully under his protection and care. Emil and Karina's relationship remained uncertain. The girl emphasized her inexperience, so the man did not force events. However, after learning about her difficulties with her studies, he rented an apartment for her in Ufa and decided that she would be able to continue her education in the city. Interestingly, the young lady's move to an apartment paid for by an adult man took place with the approval of her mother. However, it soon became clear that Karina planned to live there not alone, but with a group of friends. Emil said he objected. Offended, Karina left the apartment, but did not disappear from his life. When she was taken to the department, she insisted that their meeting did not take place on the day of Emil's disappearance. According to her, the man did not arrive at the agreed place. The staff did not immediately refute this version. Karina was released home, but under surveillance. The investigation team began to study the girl's surroundings. It soon became clear that she was in touch with criminal elements. Among her acquaintances, 2 previously convicted stood out. Unemployed 22-year-old Ruslan Abasev, who was accused of theft and armed assault, and 19-year-old Nikolai Pankov, who received a suspended sentence for illegally taking possession of a car. Investigators interviewed neighbors, villagers, and classmates of Karina and these young people. In the end, they managed to find out something remarkable. There was information about a group of young people who took possession of an expensive car. They tried to sell it, but something went wrong, and they decided to get rid of it. Emil's burnt Lexus was found near the village where Karina and her friends lived. It could have been a difficult coincidence. The young lady was again invited to a meeting with investigators. This time, she completely refused to communicate, although she was interrogated only as a witness. Meanwhile, in the neighboring rooms, the operatives talked with Pankov and Abasev. One of the young men was more outspoken and decided to write a sincere confession. Law enforcement officers expected an unpleasant outcome for Emil Shanov. However, the detailed description of what happened surprised even the most experienced specialists. Nikolai Pankov confessed to involvement in the disappearance of Emil Shanov, but stated that he was not the main participant in this story. According to him, he acted according to the plan developed by Karina. Her main assistant was her close friend, Daniil Makinin, who had not even completed her school education. The teenager's plan was not particularly complicated. Karina invites Emil to the dacha. He introduces Makinin as his brother, and Abasev and Pankov as his friends, and begins to play the role of a hospitable hostess. She treats her admirer to a dinner prepared with her own hands. Emil probably had no idea what his beloved had added to the food. Karina and Daniel were planning to inject sleeping pills. After that, the whole group was going to get rid of the defenseless Shanov. They decided to hide the traces of their actions in a small wooded area nearby. First, they pulled out of his pockets all valuables, including car keys. It was the vehicle that became their main goal. Young people dreamed of getting rich and no longer depending on their parents. Investigators believed Pankov's version that the plan was developed by Karina. However, it was difficult to imagine how this young person could come up with such a thing. During the interrogations, Karina did not hide the lack of romantic feelings for Emil, but then something terrible happened. A 30-year-old fan found himself in a terrible situation. From the very beginning, everything did not go according to the intended scenario. The sleeping pills didn't work. The guys got tired of waiting and decided to check if he could defend himself. They started pushing and hitting Emil. He tried to leave, but Karina convinced him not to pay attention to the bullies. Continuing to play the role of a caring friend, she noticed that he turned pale and offered to lie down. The exhausted man agreed. As soon as he settled down in the bedroom, the guys burst in. At first, they used gardening tools, repeatedly applying it to the defenseless. Abasev was actively helped by young Daniel. He used kitchen utensils and then brought a heavy tool for blows. When the young people decided that it was over, they moved Emil into the car. We put him in the trunk and drove into the forest, as we had planned earlier. However, Emil regained consciousness. Then Daniel and Ruslan again used garden tools against him. After that, Emil fell silent forever. However, this did not seem enough to the young people. Convinced of the irreversibility of what had happened, Abasev again picked up the cutting object. Ruslan committed particularly cruel actions towards the unfortunate. Then he started filming what was happening on his cell phone camera. Subsequently, he will explain the reasons for this behavior quite strangely. According to him, in this way he wanted to prove his feelings for Karina. However, love for Karina did not prevent both young men from giving detailed testimony against her. No one tried to protect her from responsibility. The organizers of the incident with Emil Shanov were threatened with no more than 10 years in prison. The legislation does not provide for more severe punishment for underage participants, who will support Karina after she is released. Today, Karina can't even count on the support of her own mother. Friday, October 15, 2021. An ordinary autumn day in the provincial city of Tegorsk. The last bell rang at school 156. Kravtsova, 148 centimeters tall, said goodbye to her classmate. The surveillance camera of the nearest store recorded her in a blue jacket and with a backpack with a unicorn heading home. This 40-second video clip remained the last known image of Alice for the next 783 days. The distance is 1.2 kilometers. The distance that Alice walked every day for 2 years. I knew right away that something had happened. Alice was never more than 15 minutes late and always reported if she was late with friends, Anna Kravtsova recalls. The first police squad arrived at the Kravtsov family's house at 18 hours and 38 minutes. Sergeant Igor Petrov accepted the missing person statement, but said that the case would be officially opened in 24 hours. That was standard procedure. Contrary to instructions, Anna immediately began her search. She called all of her daughter's friends, teachers, and neighbors. By midnight, more than 30 volunteers surveyed the area between the school and the Kravtsov family home. By morning, their number had increased to 114 people. Detective Nikolai Savin received the case of Alice Kravtsova's disappearance on the morning of October 16, at 9:30. By this point, 28 witnesses, including teachers, classmates, and school staff, had been questioned. The girl attended all 6 lessons. No deviations in her behavior were noticed. Grades for that day: Math 1, Russian 2, Physical education is exempt from classes due to a slight cold. From the report of the class teacher Irina Smirnova. Surveillance camera data confirmed that Alice left the school grounds at 14 hours and 38 minutes. After that, her trail was lost. The camera at the corner of Lasnaya Street, where she was supposed to appear in 4 or 5 minutes, did not record her passage. The escape from home version was ruled out due to the fact that all of Alice's belongings were left at home and the lack of motive. Abduction is the most likely version, and an accident, searches in ravines and abandoned buildings, did not yield results. Alice's father, who lived in Novosibirsk after the divorce, was under suspicion during the first 2 weeks of the investigation. The check showed that he was at work on the day of his daughter's disappearance, which was confirmed by CCTV cameras and the testimony of colleagues. On October 25th, the first breakthrough in the investigation occurred. A witness reported seeing a girl who looked like Alice talking to a man in work clothes near the school. The composite sketch was very vague. A man of 45 to 55 years old, of medium height, wearing a dark jacket and a hat. By the end of the first month of the search, the intensity of the investigation decreased. All basements and attics within a radius of 2 kilometers from the place of disappearance were checked. All those previously convicted of crimes against minors living in the city were interrogated. Divers examined the city pond. The longer a child cannot be found, the less likely it is to be found alive. Statistics are relentless. After 72 hours, the probability of a successful outcome drops to 30%. 2 weeks later, up to 10%, from an interview with criminologist Andrei Volkov, who advised the case. Alice's search was widely covered in local and federal media during the first 2 weeks. Within a month, the girl's face was on the front pages of newspapers. Volunteers from neighboring towns came to help in the search. However, gradually the attention of the public switched to other news. In January 2022, 3 months after the disappearance, the case of Alice Kravtsova was reclassified from the categories of missing persons to the category of missing persons with a suspected criminal outcome. This meant the termination of active searches and the transfer of information for regular checks in databases. Anna Kravtsova refused to reconcile with this. She quit her job to devote all her time to finding her daughter. With savings and loans, she regularly printed more than 100,000 leaflets with Alice's photo, which she updated throughout the city and in neighboring settlements. Even if the old ones didn't tear, I glued new ones every 2 weeks. People should constantly see Alice's face, keep her in mind. You can't fool a mother's heart, says Anna. Detective Nikolai Savin, contrary to the instructions of his superiors, continued to work on the case in his spare time. He regularly returned to the files and checked the ever-decreasing number of new messages. Something about this case was bothering me. Everything was too clean. No tracks, no leads. It was as if Alice had disappeared into thin air at a distance of 200 meters between 2 surveillance cameras. From the testimony of Detective Savin. On the anniversary of Alice's disappearance, a local TV channel released a small news story. Footage of the search was shown. Interviews with Alice's mother and school photos. The interview ended with a standard phrase: "If you have any information, please call the hotline." By this time, most residents of Tikhogorsk had come to terms with the idea that Alice was no longer alive. In the classroom where Alice studied at school number 156, a memorial photograph was installed. Only 2 people did not lose hope: Alice's mother and Detective Savin. And as further investigation showed, their persistence was justified. Because all this time Alice Kravtsova was only a few meters away from her former classmates. In a secret room, arranged under the floor of school number 156, by a man whom everyone considered inconspicuous and harmless. A 54-year-old school caretaker with impeccable characteristics who has worked in the institution for 15 years and is respected by colleagues. It was he who turned the technical tunnel under the school into a prison for Alice. However, there were still many months of silence and despair before his discovery. The room in which Viktor Morozev kept Alice Kravtsova was a space of 2.5 by 3 meters in a technical tunnel, under the gym of school number 156. According to the investigation materials, Morozev began to equip this room 6 months before the abduction. Technical tunnels were built in the 70s to accommodate communications. On the official plans of the school, they were marked as non-working after the reconstruction of the building in 98. However, some employees of the institution knew about their existence. We used only the main technical floor to access the service lines. Most of the staff did not even know about the existence of additional tunnels, from the testimony of Gennady Petrov, a plumber serving the school building. Morozev created a hidden passage into the tunnel through the inventory warehouse. The fake wall on movable hinges looked like an ordinary part of the room, littered with boxes and household supplies. The room itself was carefully soundproofed with old mattresses and foam panels. The walls were covered with boards, the floor was lined with linoleum. Ventilation was provided through a pipe specially laid by Morozev, which went beyond the garbage cans in the backyard of the school. The room's equipment included a metal bed with a thin mattress, a plastic table and chair, a chemical toilet, a sink with water supplied from the school system, electric heating, a weak lamp connected to the school power grid, a metal wardrobe for clothes and hygiene supplies. According to Alice, the lighting in the room was dim. Most often the lamp worked only a few hours a day. Morozev explained this by the need to save electricity so as not to arouse suspicion due to increased consumption. I haven't seen sunlight for 783 days. Only a dim yellow light bulb and sometimes a flashlight, which he left from Alice's first interview with psychologists after her release. The day of the abduction, October 15, 2021. It was reconstructed by investigators based on the testimony of the victim and the perpetrator himself. Morozev lured Alice to school after school, saying that her mother asked her to pick up some things from the locker room. Having taken Alice to the gym warehouse, he stunned her with a blow to the head and then transferred her to a prepared room. When I woke up, it was completely dark. I didn't realize where I was. I had a very bad headache. At first I thought I was dead, from Alice's testimony. The regime of detention established by Morozev was strictly regulated. He came twice a day, in the morning, before classes started, between 6 and 7 o'clock, and in the evenings, when there were only cleaners in the building, between 19 and 20 hours. He brought food, necessary hygiene supplies, and disposed of waste. The diet, reconstructed on the basis of cash receipts found in Morozev's apartment, was meager, but sufficient to maintain vital activity. Bread, cereals, pasta, potatoes, canned meat, canned fish, fresh vegetables in limited quantities. Fruit, apples, bananas once a week, milk and kefir, chocolate on holidays. During the entire time of imprisonment, Alice did not receive medical care. In cases of colds, Morozev brought her the usual medicines bought at the pharmacy. She was given antiviral drugs. Twice I had a very high fever. I thought I was going to die. He brought paracetamol and made me drink a lot of water, Alice recalls. According to her, psychologically, the most difficult side of imprisonment was the constant feeling of life above your head. I could hear swords bouncing, footsteps, as they ran in physical education. Sometimes I recognized the teachers' voices. When the children laughed at recess, I covered my ears and cried. According to Alice, during the first months of her imprisonment, she was in a state of constant fear and despair. Morozev threatened to kill her and her mother if she tried to attract attention or escape. Alice made several attempts to attract attention or call for help, but the sound insulation and the noise of the school nullified these attempts. When I heard a lot of noise overhead, I screamed. She screamed until she was hoarse. Then I realized that it was pointless and stopped. Over time, Alice developed a time orientation system. She created a calendar from scratches on the wall and marked the days. She determined the time of day by the bell and noises at school. From the noises and activity overhead, she studied the lesson schedule. Morozov admitted during the interrogation that he had developed a strange attachment to his victim. He brought her books from the school library, notebooks and pencils. In the third month of imprisonment, he gave her a radio receiver that worked on the same frequency, only with the state radio station. In the notebooks found during the rescue, Alice kept a diary, made sketches, and solved mathematical problems from textbooks. Psychologists note that this intellectual activity probably helped Alice to maintain her sanity in conditions of sensory deprivation. I knew I had to keep learning. I imagined that I was sitting in class with everyone else. I was solving problems that I heard when there was a math lesson, says Alice. Hundreds of drawings made with pencils and ballpoint pens were found on the walls of the room. They reflect Alice's psychological state at different stages of imprisonment. In the first months, gloomy drawings prevailed, mainly images of home and family. In the middle of her term, she created abstract patterns, mazes, and mathematical formulas. In the last period, she created complex compositions with many details and tried to imitate the landscapes of nature. It is noteworthy that none of the drawings depict Morozov, herself, or the place of imprisonment. According to Alice's testimony, the interaction with the kidnapper was minimal. Morozov rarely spoke to her and usually gave short instructions. In the first year, he reacted aggressively to attempts to ask questions. In the second year, he became more talkative and sometimes talked about events at school or in the city. He told me that taking care of me is better than my family. That I should be grateful. I nodded my head and agreed, because I was afraid, Alice recalls. According to the medical examination and psychological interviews, there was no physical violence of a sexual nature. However, there have been cases of physical punishments for attempts at inappropriate behavior. Blows with a ruler on the hands. Reducing food by 1 day. In the second year of imprisonment, Alice developed signs of severe depression and psychological adaptation to the situation. She began to resist less, fulfilled all the requirements of Morozov, and showed signs of the so-called Stockholm Syndrome. Psychological attachment to the aggressor. This is a normal reaction of the psyche to a long-term traumatic situation. Alice adapted to conditions that she could not change, explains Irina Kovaleva, a psychologist who worked with Alice after her rescue. An important factor in Alice's psychological state was the constant hope of salvation. In her diary, she repeatedly mentioned her mother and expressed the belief that her mother would not stop searching. Mom will find me, I know. I just have to wait. The entry dated June 12, 2022 year, made in the margins of a textbook of the Russian language. By the end of the second year of imprisonment, Morozov began to show signs of nervousness. According to Alice, he often talked about the need to move and that the school was no longer safe. As it turned out later during the investigation, this situation coincided with the arrival of a new cleaner, Svetlana Orlova, at the school, who also began to notice oddities in the behavior of the janitor. Alice spent 783 days in an underground room. During this time, she grew by 7 centimeters, lost 5 kilograms of weight, filled 18 notebooks with texts and drawings, read 43 books brought by Morozov, and suffered a serious illness without medical help. When discovered in December 2023 year, doctors diagnosed Alice with moderate anemia, vitamin deficiency, partial muscle atrophy, sleep cycle disorder, depression, and signs of PKR. The physical condition of the victim can be regarded as satisfactory, given the conditions of imprisonment. This indicates a high level of endurance and the ability of the body to adapt to extreme conditions. From the report of the Medical Commission. Experts believe that Alice's return to normal life will be a long process. Physical rehabilitation can take from 6 months to the first year, and psychological rehabilitation can take several years. The most important thing is that Alice has not lost the ability to trust people. She actively communicates, expresses emotions, and makes plans for the future. This is a good prognostic sign, says psychologist Kovaleva. During the investigation, it was found that Morozov chose Alice as a victim for a reason. He had been watching her for months. A separate notebook was found in his apartment with photos of Alice taken by a hidden camera in the school district, as well as notes on her schedule and travel routes. I wanted someone to be completely dependent on me. The only explanation of the motive that Morozov gave during the interrogation, refusing to answer other questions without a lawyer. The investigation of the case of Alice Kravtsova received an unexpected impetus almost 2 years after her disappearance. On September 15, 2023. On that day, a 25-year-old cleaner, Svetlana Orlova, who had only recently started working at school number 156, noticed oddities in the behavior of the janitor Viktor Morozov. He was always the first to arrive at school and the last to leave. At certain hours, around 6 in the morning, and after 7 in the evening, he did not allow anyone to be in the corridor next to the gym, saying that he was checking the communication systems from Orlova's testimony. At first, the cleaning lady did not pay attention to it. The situation changed on September 28, when she accidentally found food packages with receipts in the trash. The amount of purchases seemed to her excessive for one man. On October 10, Orlova noticed Morozov taking out a bag that looked like dirty laundry from the gym closet. To her question about what he was doing, the janitor reacted aggressively and forbade her to approach this place. I began to come earlier on purpose and observe. 3 times I've seen him sneak food into the gym pantry, even though there's no refrigerator there. Once I noticed that he was carrying sanitary pads. This finally convinced me that something was wrong, says Orlova. On the 20th of October, an event occurred that became a turning point in the investigation. 7th grade student Dmitry Volkov was working out his punishment. After school, he mopped the gym floor. In the empty room, he heard strange clicks coming from below. I thought it was pipes, but then the clicks became rhythmic, as if someone was purposefully knocking. I told the physical education teacher about it, but he said it was a heating system, from an interview with Dmitry. The boy told his mother about his observation, who knew the story of the missing Alice. Her mother called the hotline and reported a strange noise. The notification was registered, but was not immediately processed. In parallel, Detective Nikolai Savin, who was still unofficially dealing with Alice's case, noticed a strange pattern in the utility costs of school number 156. The analysis showed an unusually high water consumption in the building for an empty room on holidays and weekends. I requested data for 2 years. At certain hours, early in the morning and late at night, even when the school was closed, a stable water flow was recorded. This contradicted all logic from the detective's report. On the 1st of November, Svetlana Orlova found Morozov in the pocket of his work jacket, left indoors. A receipt from a children's store for the purchase of a teen-size t-shirt. Alarmed by the discovery, she photographed the receipt and anonymously emailed it to the police, specifying the name of the janitor. This information reached Detective Savin, who immediately linked it with data on water consumption. On the 3rd of November, permission was obtained for covert surveillance of Morozov. We have installed hidden cameras at the entrances to the basement of the school and in the backyard. We started tracking the suspect's movements, Savin reports. On November 15, surveillance recorded how Morozov entered the gym pantry at 6 o'clock 12 minutes in the morning with a package of food and left 18 minutes later without a package. In the evening of the same day, the scenario was repeated. On November 25, a covert check of the technical plans of the school was carried out. It turned out that the documents did not contain detailed plans of basement communications, probably due to loss during the reconstruction of the building. We brought in a specialist with a thermal imager to scan the gym floor. The results showed abnormal thermal activity in the northeast corner of the room, which indicated the presence of a heated room under the floor from the technical report. On the 1st of December, Investigator Savin received a search warrant for school premises, in particular storage rooms of the gym and technical rooms under it. The operation was scheduled for the 5th of December to minimize the presence of children in the building. 24 hours before the planned search, the police established round-the-clock surveillance of Morozov. Investigator Savin decided to arrest the suspect at the next attempt to gain access to the hidden room. On the morning of the 5th of December, 2023 year, at 6:44 hours, Viktor Morozov arrived at school number 156. Surveillance cameras recorded as he enters the building from the side of the utility yard, carrying 2 bags of food. At 6:47 minutes, he went to the gym, where he was immediately detained by a task force led by Investigator Savin. During the arrest, Morozov resisted, tried to escape, shouted that the police had no right to be in the school. In his bags, we found bread, milk, apples, chocolate, and a set of teenage-sized women's underwear. To our question, "Who are these things for?" he kept silent and demanded a lawyer, recalls one of the operatives. After Morozov's arrest, a group of forensic experts began to inspect the gym's storage room. The total area of the room was 18 square meters. At first glance, it was an ordinary storage room, crammed with boxes, sports equipment and tools. At 6:42 hours, a forensic technical expert discovered an anomaly in the structure of the wall. Upon closer examination, it turned out that part of the wall could be pushed back on metal hinges, forming a passage 70 centimeters wide and 120 centimeters high. The mechanism was thought out to the smallest detail. The false wall was supported by counterweights and opened almost silently. From the outside, the structure looked like an ordinary wall. From the inside, it was reinforced with metal plates from the report of forensic experts. Beyond the passage was a narrow corridor about 5 meters long, leading to a locked metal door. The door was equipped with 3 locks and a bolt. At 7:01 after the intervention of a lock picker, a rescue team and a group of doctors entered the room. Alice Kravtsova was lying on the bed. Emaciated, with long matted hair, dressed in a t-shirt and sweatpants, Alice did not sleep, and at the sight of strangers cowered in the corner of the bed. The first thing she asked, "You're real?" After confirming that they were real policemen and had come to save her, Alice began to cry. A medical examination showed that Alice's condition is stable. Body temperature is 36.6 C. The pulse is rapid, 110 beats per minute. Blood pressure is reduced. 90 / 60 mA, no visible damage was found. At 7:35, Alice was carried out of the basement on a stretcher and placed in an ambulance. The school grounds were cordoned off at that time. The director of the school, Elena Sokolova, who arrived at the scene, was in a state of shock. "I can't believe this happened at our school. How could we not know that this is happening right under our feet?" The director's first comment to the press. At 7:47, Alice's mother, Anna Kravtsova, arrived at the hospital. The doctors allowed a short meeting under the supervision of a psychologist. It was one of the strongest emotional scenes I have seen in 15 years of my work. Mother and daughter at first just looked at each other, not believing in the reality of what was happening. Then Alice whispered, "Mom," and they hugged, sobbing, recalls psychologist Irina Kovaleva. At the hospital, a detailed examination of Alice revealed several health problems, but to the surprise of doctors, Alice's condition was better than expected for a person who had lived in captivity for more than a year. The patient was diagnosed with anemia, vitamin D deficiency, decreased muscle tone, and vision problems. But there were no signs of serious infections, bone fractures, or systemic diseases. The room where Alice was kept was thoroughly examined by criminologists. 18 notebooks with notes and drawings were found in the room, as well as 43 books, textbooks, and works of art. Investigators also found a homemade calendar made of notches on the wall, a battery-powered radio, a supply of food for 3 or 4 days, and personal belongings, as well as hygiene items. The special attention of the investigator was attracted by the video surveillance system. A hidden camera connected to a monitor in Morozov's apartment was installed in the room. By his own admission, he was watching Alice when he wasn't around. On the same day, the police searched Morozov's apartment. Records of Alice's daily routine were found. Officers found detailed plans of the school with notes on the movements of staff, as well as more than 200 photos of Alice taken before her abduction. A diary was also found to track the food and medicine he gave her, and USB drives with recordings from the camera in the room. Viktor Morozov, who was taken to jail, refused to testify without a lawyer. A psychiatric examination diagnosed him with a personality disorder, but found him sane and capable of taking responsibility for his actions. He was fully aware of the criminal nature of his actions. The planning was methodical, with thoughtful precautions. From the psychiatric examination report, the discovery of Alice Kravtsova, who was considered dead, became a federal sensation. The area around school number 156 has become a place of pilgrimage for journalists from all over the country. It's both a miracle and a nightmare. It's a miracle that Alice survived and was found. It's a nightmare that this was happening in plain sight. The criminologists comment on the evening news. The trial of Viktor Morozov began on March 15, 2024. He was charged with kidnapping a minor, unlawful imprisonment, causing serious harm to health, and psychological violence. The case was considered behind closed doors, as it concerned a minor victim. Alice Kravtsova testified via video link in the presence of a psychologist. According to experts, a direct meeting with Morozov could cause her additional psychological trauma. On the 21st of April, 2024, the court announced the verdict: 19 years of imprisonment in a high-security colony, followed by mandatory psychiatric supervision for 5 years. Morozov partially admitted his guilt, claiming that he took care of Alice and did not want to harm her. According to the court decision, the former janitor was also obliged to pay 5 million rubles as moral compensation in favor of the victim, given the convict's lack of significant assets. The actual payment of this amount remains in question. Alice Kravtsova's physical rehabilitation took about 4 months. According to the attending physician Natalia Ivanova, the main tasks were restoration of muscle tone, adaptation to normal daylight, and normalization of sleep rhythm. By May of the 24th year, most of the physiological indicators had returned to normal values corresponding to her age. The most difficult thing was to relearn to walk long distances. In the first 2 weeks, she could hardly walk even 100 meters, from an interview with a doctor. Psychological adaptation turned out to be a longer process. Alice was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress syndrome, anxiety symptoms, and episodic and panic attacks. It was especially difficult for her to adapt to open spaces and interact with strangers. Prolonged isolation in adolescence disrupted the normal process of socialization. We are working to restore her basic trust in the world and form healthy social ties, says psychologist Irina Kovaleva. By September 2024, Alice managed to return to school, but not in a regular school. She was homeschooled with gradual inclusion in group classes. Despite a 2-year break, Alice showed good knowledge of the main subjects, especially mathematics and Russian, which she continued to study independently during her imprisonment. Alice's story caused a wide public outcry and led to systemic changes in the security of educational institutions. The Ministry of Education has launched a national program of inspection of technical premises of all schools in the country, which revealed more than 3,000 security violations and deviations from the plans of buildings. Mandatory installation of alarm systems was introduced at all technical entrances to the basements and attics of schools. New protocols have been developed for hiring technical personnel in educational institutions, including mandatory testing for mental disorders. Control over the issuance of keys to technical premises has been strengthened, and electronic logs of visits have been introduced. The principal of school number 156, Elena Sokolova, was dismissed due to loss of trust. During the internal investigation, it turned out that she ignored staff complaints about Morozev's strange behavior and did not provide proper control over the technical premises. Attentive cleaner Svetlana Orlova, who played a key role in Alice's rescue, received a state award for saving human life and a cash prize from the regional government. She continues to work at school number 156 under the guidance of a new principal. Investigator Nikolay Savin was promoted to the rank of major and appointed head of the Department for the Investigation of Crimes Against Minors. Under his leadership, a special protocol was developed to search for missing children, called the Alice Protocol.